Commander Tae-ho Kim sat in the cold metal chair and watched the alien delegates argue like children. The Galactic Council chamber was huge and filled with strange creatures from across the galaxy. Some had tentacles instead of arms. Others had 6 eyes or no eyes at all. They all spoke different languages, but the translation devices made everything sound angry and loud. Tae-ho had been coming to these meetings for 10 years. He was tired of it all. The aliens never listened to each other. They only cared about their own problems. When fights started between different species, they always called humans to fix things. Humans were good at making peace. They were patient and fair, but nobody ever thanked them for it. Dr. Hyejin Park sat next to him. She was the best person Tae-ho knew for understanding alien cultures. She could talk to any species and make them feel heard. Right now, she looked as tired as he felt. Her dark hair was pulled back tight and her eyes showed the stress of 15 straight days of these talks. Ambassador Jinwoo Lee was speaking to the council. He was older than both of them and had been doing this work for 20 years. Jinwoo knew how to use the right words to calm angry aliens. His voice was steady even when the creatures in front of him were screaming about war and territory. The problem was simple, but nobody wanted to solve it. The Vrexian Empire and the Quillen Federation both wanted the same space systems. These systems had good planets for colonies and valuable minerals. Both sides claimed the space belonged to them. They had been fighting about it for 3 years. Hundreds of ships had been destroyed. Thousands of beings had died. Humans had colonies in that same area. But humans had asked permission first. They had followed all the galactic laws. They had paid the fees and signed the papers. Their colonies were legal and peaceful. The human settlements grew food and built schools and hospitals. They helped any ships that needed repairs or supplies. The Vrexians were tall, purple creatures with sharp teeth. They were strong fighters, but not very smart about politics. They believed that might made right. If they could take something by force, then it belonged to them. The Vrexians had a big fleet of warships, and they were not afraid to use them. The Quillens were small gray beings with big heads and thin arms. They were much smarter than the Vrexians, but they were also sneaky and greedy. The Quillens did not fight with weapons very much. Instead, they used money and tricks to get what they wanted. They would make deals and then break them when it helped them. Both sides had been making threats for weeks. The Vrexians said they would attack any Quillen ships in the disputed area. The Quillens said they would stop all trade with anyone who helped the Vrexians. Other species were taking sides. Some supported the Vrexians because they were afraid of their warships. Others liked the Quillens because they offered good trade deals. The Galactic Council was supposed to keep peace between all species, but the council members could not agree on anything. They spent more time arguing than solving problems. Most of the alien delegates only cared about what would help their own people. That was when the Vrexian leader stood up. His name was hard to pronounce, so everyone just called him General Redscale. He was bigger than the other Vrexians, and his purple skin was darker. When he spoke, his voice sounded like rocks grinding together. General Redscale pointed one of his clawed fingers at the human delegation. "The solution is obvious," he said. "The humans must give up their colonies in our rightful territory. This will show they respect our ancient claims to that space." The Quillen leader jumped up immediately. She was called Speaker Sharp Mind, and she moved very quickly, despite her small size. "No, no, no," she said in her high, thin voice. "The humans should give their colonies to us. We were the first to map those systems. We have the older claim." Tae-ho felt his stomach drop. He looked at Dr. Park and saw her face go pale. Ambassador Lee stopped talking and stared at the 2 alien leaders. "Wait," Jinwoo said carefully. "You want humans to give up our legal colonies? We followed all the proper procedures. We have the signed documents from this very council." General Redscale made a sound like laughing, but it was not friendly. "Documents mean nothing when honor is at stake. Your colonies are in the way of our rightful expansion." Speaker Sharp Mind nodded eagerly. "Yes, exactly. The humans can build colonies anywhere. They are new to space travel. They should show respect to older civilizations by moving out of the way." More alien delegates began to speak up. Most of them agreed with the Vrexians and Quillans. They said humans should sacrifice their colonies for the greater good. Some pointed out that human colonies were small and new. They would be easy to move to other places. Tejo could not believe what he was hearing. Humans had been keeping peace. In the galaxy for 30 years, they had stopped dozens of wars. They had saved millions of lives from different species. Human peacekeepers had died protecting alien worlds. Human doctors had cured alien diseases. Human engineers had built space stations that everyone used. And now these same aliens wanted humans to give up their legal colonies just to stop two species from fighting each other. Dr. Park leaned over to whisper to Tejo. "This is insane," she said quietly. "We have 17 colonies in that sector. Over 2 million human civilians live there. Families and children and elderly people who cannot just pack up and move." The council debate went on for hours. More and more delegates spoke in favor of the plan. They said it was reasonable and fair. They said humans were being selfish by refusing. Some even suggested that if humans did not agree voluntarily, then the council should vote to force them. Ambassador Lee tried to explain why this was wrong. He talked about legal rights and signed agreements. He reminded everyone of all the times humans had helped their species. He asked them to think of another solution that did not involve destroying human homes, but the aliens were not listening. They had already decided that humans should pay the price for someone else's peace. Finally, Tejo had heard enough. He stood up slowly and walked to the speaker platform. The chamber became quiet. Everyone knew Commander Kim, and they knew he did not speak unless he had something important to say. Tejo looked around at all the alien faces staring at him. He thought about all the human soldiers who had died keeping these species safe. He thought about all the human families who would lose their homes if the council got its way. He thought about 30 years of thankless service to creatures who saw humans as disposable. "For 3 decades, Tejo said in a clear, strong voice, "humans have bled for your peace. We have died for your causes. We have given up our own expansion so you could have stability in your territories. We asked for nothing in return except the right to live in peace on our legal colonies." The chamber stayed quiet. Some aliens looked uncomfortable, but none of them spoke up. "Today you ask us to sacrifice our homes and families so that 2 species can avoid taking responsibility for their own conflict. You want us to abandon legal colonies because it is easier than making the Vrexians and Quillans follow galactic law." Tejo paused and looked directly at General Redscale and Speaker Sharp Mind. "No more," he said simply. "Humanity is done being your unpaid peacekeepers. We are done dying for species who see us as expendable. We are done sacrificing our people for your convenience." He walked back to the human delegation area. Dr. Park and Ambassador Lee were already gathering their documents and equipment. "The human delegation is leaving," Tejo announced. "We withdraw from all mediation duties effective immediately. Solve your own problems." The 3 humans walked out of the Galactic Council chamber while hundreds of alien delegates sat in stunned silence. Captain So-Young Choi stood on the bridge of her ship and watched the last human transport leave the Kelvani system. 6 months had passed since Commander Kim walked out of the Galactic Council. Now So-Young was helping to bring every human peacekeeper home. The transport ships were full of human families who had lived on alien worlds for years. Some of the children had been born on those planets and had never seen Earth. They were confused about why they had to leave their friends and schools behind. Their parents tried to explain, but it was hard to make children understand politics and betrayal. So-Young had been a peacekeeper captain for 8 years. She had fought pirates and stopped 3 different wars. Her ship had rescued alien civilians from disasters and delivered medical supplies to plague zones. She was proud of her service, but she was also angry about how it had ended. The Kelvani were bird-like creatures with bright blue feathers and sharp yellow beaks. They were peaceful traders who had never bothered anyone. When space pirates attacked their merchant ships, the Kelvani asked humans for help. So Young's squadron had hunted down the pirates and made the trade routes safe again. Now she was leaving, the Kelvani behind. The bird people had begged her to stay. They said the pirates would come back without human protection. Their leader had even offered to pay humans for continued patrols. But the orders from Earth were clear. All human military forces were coming home. Admiral Dong Hyun Nam had sent the withdrawal orders to every human base and outpost in the galaxy. The message was simple. Humanity no longer serves as peacekeepers for the Galactic Council. All personnel will return to human space immediately. No exceptions. Some alien governments tried to negotiate separate deals with individual human commanders. The Altarians offered mining rights if humans would keep their defense station in orbit. The Centauri Federation promised exclusive trade contracts for continued patrols. A few desperate species even offered to join the human colonies if they could get protection. Admiral Nam rejected every offer. He said humans would not work for anyone who had supported the Council's demand to give up legal colonies. That included almost every major alien government in the galaxy. Dr. Hyojin Park was traveling with So Young's fleet. She was documenting everything for the historical record. Her job was to interview the human families and workers who were leaving their posts. She wanted to understand how deep human involvement in galactic affairs had become. The results surprised even her. Humans had not just been peacekeepers and diplomats. They had become the invisible foundation that held galactic civilization together. Human doctors worked in alien hospitals because they were good at treating different species. Human engineers designed space stations because they thought about safety first, instead of profit. Human teachers worked in alien schools because they were patient with children from any species. In the Andromeda sector, humans had been running the traffic control system for all merchant ships. Without them, cargo deliveries became chaotic and dangerous. Several accidents happened in the first week after human controllers went home. On the research station orbiting Proxima b, human scientists had been leading a project to cure the Zephyrian wasting disease. When they left, the project collapsed. The alien researchers could not work together without human coordination. Thousands of Zephyrians would die from a disease that humans might have cured. Minister Yujin Kang was in charge of closing down human administrative offices throughout the galaxy. She had worked for 15 years helping alien governments organize their bureaucracies. Humans were good at paperwork and record-keeping. Many alien species found those tasks boring or confusing. Yujin discovered that humans had been quietly managing trade disputes, immigration paperwork, and resource allocation for dozens of minor alien governments. These species had small populations and limited technology. They depended on human administrators to handle complex interspecies relationships. When the humans left, these governments began to fail. Without proper record-keeping, they lost track of trade agreements and treaty obligations. Immigration between their worlds stopped because nobody knew how to process the applications. Some of these small civilizations faced complete economic collapse. The withdrawal was hardest on the mixed colonies where humans lived alongside aliens. These settlements had been built as examples of interspecies cooperation. Humans and aliens worked together running farms, factories, and schools. They had become real communities where species differences did not matter much. Captain So Young visited one of these colonies on her way home. It was called New Harmony, and it had been a beautiful place. Humans lived in houses next to centaurians and vegan lizard folk. The children played together and adults helped each other with work and family problems. When So Young arrived, the houses were empty. The humans had already left for Earth. The aliens who stayed behind looked lost and sad. Many of them had human friends who were like family. Some alien children cried for their human teachers and neighbors. The Centaurian. Mayor asked So Young if some humans could stay. She explained that the colony needed human mechanics to maintain the power systems and human doctors to treat mixed species medical problems. Without them, New Harmony would have to close down completely. So Young wanted to help, but her orders were clear. No humans could stay behind in alien space. The risk was too great that they might be used as hostages or bargaining tools. Every human had to return to human-controlled territory. Admiral Nam was already reinforcing the human colonies that the Galactic Council had tried to force them to abandon. Instead of giving up those settlements, humans were making them stronger. New defensive platforms were being built. More warships were being assigned to patrol duties. The message was clear. Humans would defend their own people and territories first from now on. The alien species who had demanded human colonies began to realize their mistake. The Vrexians and Quillans were still fighting each other, but now their war was spreading to other systems. Without human peacekeepers to contain the conflict, it was growing larger and more dangerous every day. Other species tried to take over human peacekeeping duties, but they were not good at it. The Altarians were too aggressive and turned negotiations into fights. The Vegan Confederacy was too focused on profit and would not help anyone who could not pay them. The Centauri Federation tried to be fair, but they did not understand how to deal with species that were very different from themselves. Dr. Park analyzed the early results of human withdrawal. Piracy had increased by 200% in areas where human patrols used to operate. 3 minor wars had started between species that humans used to help negotiate treaties. Trade volume was down 30% because merchants were afraid to travel without human protection. The worst part was that species were starting to blame each other for the loss of human services. The Altarians said the Vegans had been too greedy in supporting the colony demands. The Vegans said the Centaurians should have defended human rights better. Everyone was angry, but nobody wanted to admit they had made a terrible mistake. Captain So Young finished her evacuation duties and headed home to Earth. Her ships carried the last human peacekeepers out of alien space. Behind them, they left a galaxy that was already starting to tear itself apart. As her fleet jumped to hyperspace, So Young looked at the reports from across the galaxy. Fights were breaking out everywhere. Trade routes were becoming dangerous. Scientific projects were failing. The careful balance that humans had maintained for 30 years was collapsing. She thought about all the alien civilians who would suffer because their governments had been too proud and greedy to treat humans fairly. She felt sorry for them, but she also felt angry. Humans had given everything to help these species and had been repaid with betrayal and demands for more sacrifice. Now the aliens would learn what the galaxy was like without human protection. So Young hoped they would remember this lesson for a long time. Maybe next time they would think twice before biting the hand that kept them safe. The human fleet disappeared into hyperspace, carrying the last peacekeepers home. Behind them, the A galaxy began its slide toward chaos and war. The species who had demanded human colonies were about to discover that some mistakes cannot be undone. General Myung-Soo Bae sat in his command center on Earth and watched the galaxy burn. Large screens showed real-time reports from across known space. Every day brought news of new conflicts, failed negotiations, and collapsing governments. It had been 1 year since humans abandoned their peacekeeping duties. The results were worse than anyone had predicted. The war between the Vrexians and Quillans had spread to 6 more star systems. What started as a territorial dispute over mining rights had become a massive conflict involving dozens of species. The Vrexian Empire was using its military might to attack anyone who traded with Quillan worlds. The Quillan Federation was responding by sabotaging Vrexian supply lines and bribing other species to join their side. General Bae had fought against both the Vrexians and Quillans in the past. He knew their tactics and weaknesses. The Vrexians were brave fighters, but they were not good at long-term planning. They would win battles, but lose wars because they could not manage complex logistics. The Quillans were clever strategists, but they had weak military forces. They depended on allies and mercenaries who might switch sides if offered better deals. When humans were mediating between them, these weaknesses had been balanced out. Human negotiators could help Vrexians think beyond the next battle. They could give Quillans the security guarantees they needed to trust peace agreements. Without human involvement, both species were falling back on their worst instincts. Dr. Eun G. Lim worked in the Intelligence Analysis Department. Her job was to track political and economic developments throughout the galaxy. The data she collected painted a picture of rapid civilizational collapse. Trade networks that had existed for centuries were breaking down. Planets that had never known war were building military fleets. Alien governments were making desperate alliances with anyone who promised protection. The most shocking reports came from the former human patrol zones. These areas had been peaceful for decades because human peacekeepers prevented conflicts before they could grow serious. Pirates and raiders knew that attacking innocent ships would bring swift human retaliation. Now, those same criminals were operating freely. The Kelvani bird people had been right to worry about pirate attacks. Within 2 months of human withdrawal, their merchant ships were being raided regularly. The Kelvani tried to hire mercenaries for protection, but the cost was enormous. Many Kelvani trading companies went out of business. Their economy was collapsing. Similar disasters were happening throughout the galaxy. The Altarian mining stations were being attacked by raiders who stole valuable minerals. The Centauri agricultural worlds were losing food shipments to hijackers. Even the powerful vegan confederacy was struggling to protect its territory without human military support. Counselor Wu Jin-Yang had resigned from the Galactic Council 6 months earlier. He was one of the few humans who had tried to work within the alien political system after the walkout. His goal had been to find some compromise that might bring humans back to peacekeeping duties. The aliens had ignored all his suggestions. They were too proud to admit they had made a mistake. Instead of apologizing for demanding human colonies, they blamed humans for being selfish and unreasonable. Some alien leaders claimed that humans were deliberately causing conflicts by withdrawing their services. Yang had given up trying to reason with them. He returned to human space and took a job advising the Colonial Council on dealing with alien refugees. More aliens were asking for permission to immigrate to human worlds every day. They wanted to escape the chaos and violence spreading through their home regions. The Galactic Council was having emergency meetings every week, but they could not agree on solutions to any problems. The same species that had united to demand human colonies now blamed each other for the consequences. Nobody wanted to take responsibility for keeping peace or maintaining trade routes. Some alien governments tried to recreate human peacekeeping methods. The Altarians sent military forces to mediate disputes between smaller species. But Altarian culture was based on dominance and hierarchy. When they tried to negotiate peace deals, they sounded like they were giving orders. Weaker species felt bullied and intimidated instead of helped. The Centauri Federation attempted to take over human scientific cooperation projects. They had good intentions, but they lacked human organizational skills. Centaurians were individualistic and competitive. They had trouble working together on long-term research goals. Most of the scientific collaborations fell apart within months. Even the Vegan Confederacy failed when they tried to manage galactic trade networks. Vegans were excellent at making profitable deals, but they did not understand the human concept of fairness. They gave better terms to rich species and ignored the needs of poorer civilizations. This created resentment and trade disputes that sometimes led to armed conflicts. General Bay received reports about conflicts that humans had resolved decades earlier. The Sithrak-Mordani border dispute had been settled through human mediation 25 years ago. Both reptilian species had agreed to share a resource-rich asteroid belt. Humans had helped them build joint mining stations and establish fair profit-sharing agreements. Now the Sithrax and Mordanis were fighting again. Without human oversight, their cooperation had gradually broken down. Each species accused the other of taking more than their fair share of asteroid minerals. What started as trade disagreements had escalated to military raids on mining platforms. Dr. Lim calculated that it would take at least 50,000 human peacekeepers to restore order to the galaxy, but Earth's population was only 8 billion people, and most of them had no military training. Even if humans wanted to return to galactic peacekeeping, they did not have enough trained personnel to handle all the conflicts that had developed. The situation was made worse by the fact that alien species had become dependent on human services without realizing it. They had grown used to calling human mediators whenever problems arose. Without that safety net, they did not know how to prevent small disputes from becoming major wars. Some alien worlds were experiencing complete governmental collapse. These were usually small colonies or minor species that had relied heavily on human administrative support. When human bureaucrats left, they could not maintain basic government functions like tax collection, law enforcement, or public services. The planet Harmony 7 had been a model interspecies colony with humans, centaurians, and vegan lizard folk living together. After human withdrawal, the different species began segregating themselves. Cultural misunderstandings that humans used to help resolve became sources of serious conflict. Within 6 months, Harmony 7 had 3 separate governments that barely spoke to each other. General Bay knew that some of his fellow humans felt satisfied watching their former allies struggle. There was a sense of justice in seeing ungrateful species face the consequences of their decisions. But Bay also felt concerned about the long-term implications. The galaxy was becoming a more dangerous and chaotic place. If the current trends continued, there might not be much left of galactic civilization to save. Trillions of innocent beings were suffering because their governments had been too proud and greedy to treat humans fairly. But Bay also understood why Earth's leadership refused to return to peacekeeping duties. Humans had sacrificed too much for species that saw them as expendable. Any future relationship would have to be built on mutual respect and genuine partnership instead of exploitation. The reports from across the galaxy continued to arrive each day. New wars were starting. Old alliances were breaking apart. Trade networks were collapsing. Refugee populations were growing larger. The carefully maintained balance of galactic civilization was unraveling faster than anyone had expected. General Bay closed his daily intelligence briefing and looked out the window at Earth's peaceful cities. Humanity was prospering while the rest of the galaxy tore itself apart. Human colonies were expanding into new systems. Human science and technology were advancing rapidly without the burden of constantly helping alien species. But somewhere in the back of his mind, Bay wondered if humans had made the right choice. The galaxy was a big place, and Earth was just one small world. If galactic civilization completely collapsed, humans might eventually face threats that they could not handle alone. For now, though, Earth was safe, and human colonies were growing stronger. The species that had demanded human sacrifice were learning what life was like without human protection. It was a hard lesson, but perhaps a necessary one. Ambassador Haiwan Shin lived alone on a small moon at the edge of human space. She had built a simple house with large windows that looked out at the stars. 2 years had passed since she walked away from galactic politics forever. She spent her days reading books, growing vegetables, and trying to forget 30 years of thankless diplomatic service. The alien ship appeared in her sky on a Tuesday morning. It was a Centauri diplomatic vessel flying under a white flag of truce. Haiwan watched it land near her house through her kitchen window. She did not go outside to meet the visitors. She knew why they had come, and she was not interested in hearing what they had to say. 5 Centauri diplomats walked across the rocky ground to her front door. They wore their finest ceremonial robes and carried gifts from their homeworld. Their leader was Ambassador Veltar, whom Haiwan had known for many years. He had been a friend once before politics and greed poisoned their relationship. Veltar knocked on her door politely. "Ambassador Shin," he called out. "Please grant us a few minutes of your time. We have traveled far to speak with you." Hei-Won did not answer. She continued preparing her lunch and pretended she had not heard anything. The Centauri waited outside for 2 hours before finally giving up and returning to their ship. Similar scenes were happening throughout human space. Desperate alien governments were sending envoys to any human who might listen to their pleas. Former diplomats, retired military officers, and even human civilians who had worked on alien worlds were being contacted by species that had once considered humans expendable. The offers they brought were impressive. The Altarian Republic promised to give humans 3 entire star systems if they would return to peacekeeping duties. The Vegan Confederacy offered exclusive trading rights worth trillions of credits. Some smaller species were willing to give humans complete control over their military forces in exchange for protection from raiders and pirates. Admiral Sunmi Ju was leading human exploration fleets into uncharted space beyond the galaxy's outer rim. Her ships were discovering new worlds, rich in resources and perfect for human colonization. The crews were excited about building settlements where humans would never have to deal with alien politics or demands for sacrifice. When alien envoys tried to contact Admiral Ju, she refused to meet with them. Her response was always the same. "Humanity is busy expanding into new territory. We have no time for species that betrayed our trust." The galaxy was falling apart more quickly than anyone had predicted. The war between Vrexians and Quillans had become a massive conflict involving most of the major powers. Trade had collapsed in large sections of space. Millions of refugees were fleeing from combat zones with nowhere safe to go. President Kite-O addressed the Human Colonial Union from his office on Earth. Behind him, large screens showed images of burning alien cities and destroyed space stations. The pictures were meant to remind humans of what they had escaped by withdrawing from galactic affairs. 2 years ago, President O said in his calm, steady voice, "The Galactic Council demanded that we sacrifice our legal colonies to appease 2 species who could not resolve their own disputes. They told us that human homes and families were expendable. They expected us to pay the price for someone else's peace." The president paused and looked directly into the camera. Today, those same species are destroying each other and taking half the galaxy with them. Their wars have killed more beings in 2 years than died in the previous 50 years of conflicts that humans helped resolve. O continued his speech by listing the offers that alien governments were making to bring humans back to peacekeeping. He described the desperate messages arriving at Earth every day. Some alien leaders were even threatening to attack human colonies if humans did not return to help them. "They want us back now," the president said with a slight smile. "Not because they respect our contributions or value our sacrifice. They want us back because their galaxy is burning and they do not know how to put out the fires they started." The president's final words were broadcast across human space and leaked to alien communication networks. "We offered our hand in friendship, and they bit it. We offered our lives for their peace, and they called us expendable. Now they want us back because they need us. But needing us is not the same as respecting us. They can burn." The Galactic Council was a shadow of its former self. More than half the member species had withdrawn to focus on their own survival. The remaining delegates spent most of their time arguing about which species was responsible for the current crisis. Nobody wanted to admit that demanding human colonies had been a catastrophic mistake. Some council members suggested using military force to compel human participation in peacekeeping efforts. The idea was quickly abandoned when intelligence reports showed how strong human defenses had become. The colonies that aliens had demanded humans abandon were now fortified bases with powerful defensive fleets. General Red Scale of the Rexians was one of the first alien leaders to swallow his pride and directly request human assistance. His empire was losing the war against the Quillans and their allies. Vrexian military doctrine was effective against individual enemies, but failed against coalitions of multiple species working together. Red Scale sent a message to President O, offering to return all the territory that Vrexians had claimed in human, colonial space. He promised to pay reparations for any damage caused by Vrexian military forces. He even offered to make the Vrexian Empire a client state of humanity in exchange for military support. The human response was delivered by a junior, diplomatic aide. The Human Colonial Union does not negotiate with species that consider human lives expendable. General Red Scale and his government are welcome to resolve their conflicts through their own efforts. Speaker Sharp Mind of the Quillans made even more desperate offers. The Quillan Federation promised to share all their advanced technologies with humanity. They offered to build manufacturing facilities on human worlds at no cost. They were even willing to relocate entire Quillan populations to work as laborers in human colonies. The human government rejected every Quillan offer without serious consideration. A brief statement explained that humanity had no interest in working with species that had supported the demand for human territorial concessions. Dr. Yun-Ji Lim continued tracking the collapse of galactic civilization from her office on Earth. Her latest reports showed that more than 40% of known space was now experiencing active military conflicts. Trade volume had decreased by 70% compared to pre-withdrawal levels. At least 12 minor civilizations had completely collapsed, and their populations were scattered as refugees. The most tragic cases were the mixed colonies where humans and aliens had lived together peacefully. These settlements had been models of interspecies cooperation until human withdrawal forced the communities apart. Now most of them were abandoned ruins where different species had fought each other over resources and territory. New Harmony had been completely evacuated after ethnic violence broke out between the remaining Centaurian and vegan populations. Paradise Station had been destroyed in a battle between Altarian and Mordani forces, who both claimed salvage rights to the abandoned facility. Dozens of similar communities had been lost to the chaos spreading across the galaxy. Some alien species tried to blame humans for deliberately causing the galactic crisis. They claimed that human withdrawal was a calculated act of revenge designed to punish aliens for demanding territorial concessions. A few extremist groups even suggested that humans had planned the whole sequence of events from the beginning. These accusations only made human leaders more determined to stay out of alien affairs. President O issued a statement saying that any species making false charges against humanity would be permanently banned from human space. Several alien ambassadors were expelled from Earth for repeating conspiracy theories about human motives. The reality was much simpler than alien conspiracy theories suggested. Humans had withdrawn because they were tired of being treated as expendable, tools by species that took their sacrifices for granted. The galactic crisis was not part of some human master plan. It was the natural result of removing the stabilizing influence that humans had provided for decades. Admiral Sun Mi-ju's exploration. Fleets continued pushing into unexplored regions beyond the galaxy's edge. They were finding incredible wonders that no alien species had ever seen. Nebulae filled with rare elements, planets covered in crystal formations, star systems with unusual physics that could revolutionize human technology. Best of all these, discoveries belonged entirely to humanity. There were no alien claims to consider or galactic laws to follow. Humans could build whatever they wanted and go wherever they chose without asking permission from ungrateful species who saw them as disposable peacekeepers. The contrast with alien space could not have been sharper. While humans explored new frontiers and built prosperous colonies, the galaxy behind them was tearing itself apart. The species that had demanded human sacrifice were now discovering what life was like without human protection and mediation. It was a hard lesson, but perhaps the most important one the galaxy had ever learned. Some contributions are only appreciated after they are gone. Elder statesman Minho Quan sat in his office overlooking the Pacific Ocean and watched the largest alien fleet in galactic history approach Earth. 5 years had passed since humanity walked away from peacekeeping duties. Now, every major species in the galaxy was coming to beg for human help. Their massive diplomatic convoy filled Earth's orbital space with ships representing hundreds of civilizations. Minho was 93 years old and had been present at humanity's first contact with alien species 70 years earlier. He remembered the wonder and excitement of learning that Earth was not alone in the universe. He also remembered the gradual realization that most alien species saw humans as useful tools rather than equal partners. The alien delegation was led by the same species that had originally demanded human colonies be surrendered. General Redscale of the Vrexians looked much older, and his purple skin was scarred from battles. Speaker Sharpmind of the Quillins moved more slowly, and her gray skin had a sickly pale color. Both of them had watched their civilizations crumble while fighting each other instead of seeking peaceful solutions. Captain Young-Ho Park represented the new generation of human leadership. He was the son of Dr. Hyejin Park, who had documented humanity's withdrawal from galactic affairs. Young-Ho had grown up during the years of human isolation and had never known a time when humans served as galactic peacekeepers. To him, the idea of risking human lives for ungrateful aliens seemed foolish and wasteful. The alien delegates filled the largest conference room in the United Nations building. They brought gifts worth more than the gross domestic product of entire star systems. Rare crystals that could power cities for centuries. Technological devices that could extend human lifespans by hundreds of years. Star maps showing the locations of uninhabited worlds, perfect for human colonization. General Redscale spoke first. His voice was quieter than it had been 5 years earlier, and his aggressive manner had been replaced by desperate humility. "Honored humans," he said, while bowing his massive frame. "The Vrexian Empire acknowledges our grave errors in judgment. We should never have demanded that you abandon your rightful colonies. We should have recognized your invaluable contributions to galactic peace." Speaker Sharpmind nodded agreement. "The Quillin Federation adds our deepest apologies. We were blinded by greed and territorial ambition. We failed to appreciate the sacrifices that humanity made on our behalf for so many years." Minho listened to their words without showing any emotion. He had heard similar apologies from dozens of alien species over the past year. They all followed the same pattern. First, they admitted making mistakes. Then they described the terrible consequences of human withdrawal. Finally, they offered increasingly desperate bribes to bring humans back to peacekeeping. The aliens took turns describing the catastrophic state of galactic civilization. The war between Vrexians and Quillins had expanded until it covered nearly half of known space. 67 star systems had been completely depopulated by the fighting. Billions of beings had died or become refugees. Entire species faced extinction because their homeworlds had been destroyed. Trade networks that had existed for thousands of years were completely broken. Pirates and raiders controlled large areas of space that had once been safe for merchant vessels. Many planets could no longer obtain basic necessities like food and medical supplies. Some civilizations had regressed to pre-industrial technology levels because they could not maintain their advanced systems without trade. The Galactic Council no longer existed as a meaningful organization. Only 37 species still sent delegates to the meetings, and most of them spent their time blaming each other for the crisis. There was no central authority capable of coordinating relief efforts or negotiating ceasefires between warring factions. Representative after representative stood up to beg for human intervention. They offered humanity leadership of a new galactic government with unlimited authority over all member species. They promised to pay reparations for every human who had died in peacekeeping service. Some even offered to relocate their entire populations to serve as workers in human colonies. Captain Park listened to the offers with obvious disgust. When the aliens finished speaking, he stood up and addressed them in a cold, clear voice. "You offer us leadership of the galaxy now that the galaxy is a burned-out wreck. You promise to serve us now that your own civilizations are destroyed. Where were these offers 5 years ago when we asked only for the right to keep our legal colonies?" The young captain walked to the center of the room where he could look directly at all the alien delegates. "My generation has grown up watching you tear each other apart. We have built a prosperous human civilization while you destroyed yours through greed and stupidity. Why should we risk our lives to save species that betrayed our trust?" Some of the aliens began to weep or make sounds of despair. The Altarian delegate collapsed to his knees and begged forgiveness for his species' role in demanding human territorial concessions. Several smaller species offered to surrender their sovereignty and become human protectorates if it would convince humanity to restore order to the galaxy. Minho finally spoke. His voice carried the authority of age and experience. "I was present when humans first encountered alien life. I watched us learn to communicate with species whose biology and culture were completely different from our own. I helped negotiate the first treaties that brought peace between hostile civilizations." The old statesman paused and looked around at the desperate alien faces. "For 70 years, humans served as bridge builders between species that could not understand each other. We died in your wars, cured your diseases, and resolved your conflicts. We asked for nothing except the chance to build peaceful colonies in unclaimed space." Minho's voice grew harder. 5 years ago, you repaid our service by demanding that we sacrifice our homes and families to resolve a dispute between two greedy empires. You made it clear that human lives and human rights were expendable when they conflicted with alien interests. The alien delegates listened in silence as Minho continued. "Today you come offering us control of a ruined galaxy. You promise to serve us now that you have nothing left to give. But you do not offer these things out of respect or gratitude. You offer them out of desperation because your civilizations are dying." Counselor Jihaya Seo had the final decision on humanity's response to the alien pleas. She was a middle-aged diplomat who had spent 20 years working with alien species before the withdrawal. Unlike the younger generation, she understood both the costs and benefits of galactic involvement. SEO had seen human peacekeepers die protecting alien civilians. She had watched human doctors work around the clock to save alien children during plague outbreaks. She knew that many humans had genuinely cared about the welfare of other species and had made real sacrifices for galactic peace. But she also remembered the casual way that alien leaders had demanded human colonies be abandoned. She recalled how quickly supposed allies had turned against humanity when it served their interests. The betrayal had been complete and unforgivable. After hours of alien pleading, Counselor Seo stood to deliver humanity's final answer. The conference room became completely silent as hundreds of alien delegates waited to learn their fate. "Humanity will provide humanitarian assistance to refugee populations," SEO announced. "We will accept limited numbers of immigrants from species facing extinction. We will maintain trade relationships with civilizations that can offer fair exchanges for human goods and services." The aliens began to show signs of hope until CO continued speaking. "However, humanity will never again serve as peacekeepers or mediators for species that betrayed our trust. We will not risk human lives to resolve conflicts between civilizations that proved they do not value human sacrifice." General Red Scale made one final desperate plea. "Surely you cannot abandon trillions of innocent beings to death and destruction. Many of us had no voice in the decisions that offended humanity. Our children and civilians are paying the price for the mistakes of our leaders." Counselor Seo looked at the Vrexian general with cold eyes. "Where was your concern for innocent beings when you demanded that human families abandon their legal colonies?" Your children and civilians are indeed paying for your leader's mistakes. But so did human children and civilians when they were forced to leave their homes because of your territorial greed. The alien delegation departed Earth, carrying news that would spread despair throughout what remained of galactic civilization. Humanity would provide minimal humanitarian aid, but would never again serve as the galaxy's protectors and peacekeepers. Captain Park watched the alien ships disappear into hyperspace from his office window. "Good riddance," he said to his father's old friend, Min-ho. "Let them solve their own problems for once." Min-ho nodded slowly, but felt a deep sadness in his heart. The galaxy had been a more hopeful place when species worked together despite their differences. Now it was becoming a dark and dangerous realm where only the strong survived and the weak were abandoned to their fate. Elder statesman Min-ho Kwon spent his final years watching reports from across the galaxy. Some species managed to rebuild small pockets of civilization around their homeworlds.